The content presented in this podcast and YouTube show is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the guidance of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding your health or a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard or seen on this show. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or emergency services immediately. The host, guests, and producers of this show are not responsible for any adverse effects resulting from your use of or reliance on any information presented.
Andrea, can you hear us?
Many years ago, I died for 26 seconds. There are so many people in this world that have experienced life events that have led to their soul purpose. Wake Up Your Soul with Andrea will bring you these significant life events that demonstrate how to use those moments for guidance and life purpose. These are our stories. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Wake Up Your Soul with Andrea Lynn. Today's guest is John Mabry, and he's here to talk to us a little bit about living in God's grace and how becoming an amputee changed his life and how he has had to gain a different perspective on situations and how to overcome them in his life. So please, let's welcome John Mabry. Hi, John.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Yes, I'm so happy to have you here. And I want to dive right into a question I had because I was looking through your feed on Instagram and I saw you talking about waking up with a hole in your heart or a hole in your soul, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people can relate to that, where you wake up and you just have this empty feeling in some way or another, right? And so how can people learn to not feel down with that feeling, like instead turn it into a good thing? What should they do if they wake up and they're like, something doesn't feel right? How do you like recognize what that hole is in your soul and what do you do with that emotion?
Yeah. So let me give you and your audience a visual. So I have a prosthetic leg, as you mentioned, so I was in a car accident in 2000 in Texas, had my leg amputated after a bunch of surgeries. And so when I wake up in the morning, I feel disconnected, right? I feel literally and figuratively feel disconnected before I even step out of bed, because I can't step out of bed without putting something on, without putting on a prosthetic leg. I have to put something on before I get out of bed or I'm going to be lopsided. I can maybe hop to the bathroom or hop to the kitchen to get coffee, but at some point I'm going to tire out pretty quickly and just end up on the floor. So in terms of my spirit and my soul, with your question is, I feel like that every single morning. I have struggled for over 20 years off and on with drug and alcohol addiction as a result of my traumas and mental health issues. And so I wake up every morning with just this hole in my soul. And I feel like God designed me to feel that. That's not a bad thing. That's, for me, that's a call to action. That's a call to doing something to fill that space in the morning. So just as I put on my leg when I get out of bed to feel whole, before I get out of bed every morning, I've learned through a lot of trial and error and failing and ending up in rehab centers across the country that I need to be in prayer, that I need to ask for God's guidance and ask for God's help before I even get out of bed. And I've learned this from Mel Robbins. Just this last week, I heard Mel Robbins talking about how she's like, sometimes getting out of bed is just so hard. It's just so daunting to think like, oh, I have to face everything I have to face today. Like, I don't know if I have it in me. So what she does, and I've done it like the last week, is she puts her hand on her heart and her hand on her stomach and just kind of gets grounded. And so I've gone into prayer this last week and be like, God, please just help me with this day. Help me just roll out of bed and with some gratitude. And so that's how I get out of bed. And then within the first 30 minutes to hour of my day, I'm in a devotion, doing some reading in the Bible and a devotion with the group that I'm in. And that helps me get grounded. If I start my day with that, it really sets the tone.
So really, yeah. So what you're saying really is to recognize the feeling, first of all, right? Because a lot of people just kind of brush it off and stay in the mood, I would say, right? Like they don't even recognize they're having a feeling, and then having the next thought of, I can change this. What
Mm-hmm.
can I do? And like you're saying, you can pray about it. And not everybody's going to be spiritual, religious,
Sure.
right? And
Sure.
that's okay too.
Yeah. Or to just go, I'm okay. Even if it's just to remind yourself like, hey, I'm okay. I'm not responsible for my first thought, because when I wake up every morning, I immediately want to go into anxiety. I want to go into, I got to grab my phone and look on social media. What did I miss throughout the night? But I'm not responsible for my first thought, but I am responsible for my second thought and my first action.
Yeah.
And maybe not picking up the phone first thing in the morning is your spiritual act. Is it going and doing something positive, stepping outside, breathing some fresh air is your way of connecting before getting into the day.
I think it's really important what you're saying right now about being responsible for your thoughts, because a lot of people aren't. They just live through life in this very unconscious way almost, right? They just
Mm-hmm.
kind of let every moment come and go instead of really tapping into what they're feeling and thinking, and then thinking, you know what? I could have a different thought. Like I really could. I
Mm-hmm.
totally attach a different emotion to this, which kind of brings me to this. I want you to tell your whole story in a moment, but there's just some very interesting things you've shared on your Instagram. And I was like, oh, we got to talk about this. But you said you were talking about a story about your leg, and when I think the doctor said you weren't going to be able to run anymore. And you had this thought of, when does this end? And I relate to that so much. And I think so many others that have struggles in life can relate to that. I had a lot of very serious, different illnesses, and it just felt like one after the other. And it was like, when is this going to end?
Yeah, life comes at you unrelenting. It really does. And so, without sharing all of my story, just to kind
Yeah.
of hook your listeners,
Yeah.
is after losing my leg, I did go out to Hollywood and act in some major Hollywood productions as an amputee actor, using my leg to get blown up on shows and movies. And been in the movie Superbad. I got seen in Superbad with Jonah Hill, and did that whole LA party lifestyle thing. I've been invented a. I'm an inventor. Invented a part for amputees, for part of a prosthetic that's used around the world, and so I've been fortunate to be able to have some good experiences as an amputee. So all the success that I've had, I've done triathlons, I've done skydiving, all these things that I've been able to do. But last year, right now at this time, I was having my second surgery on my amputated limb from an ingrown hair. All right, guys, and you have no idea how much a tiny little ingrown hair can get under the skin of an amputee. And when you're walking all day, every day in this, prosthetic limb where it's just grinding every step that you take, normally they last for a week or two. They kind of go away. You just deal with it. You block the pain out. But this one was like 3 months. Stuck around for 3 months. I go to the dermatologist, did a couple of injections, didn't work. Come back again. He had to cut into it, remove some tissue. And he said, you're going to be off your leg for 2 weeks. And I was like, are you kidding? No, man. Like, I got a life. Like, I can't be on crutches for 2 weeks. Like, I'm not going backwards. I've already done all my surgeries. I went through 14 procedures in 1 year after my amputation, before amputating my leg. And I said, I'm not doing that, but all right, we got to do it. So he cuts in. Next thing you know, that got infected. And then I go to Vanderbilt, and that got infected. Last Easter, I was on the operating table Easter morning this last year, with nobody in my room. I had my kids were out of town with their mother. I had nobody there, and they pushed my surgery back to 2:00. And I called a friend of mine. I called one of my accountability guys and said, "Look, man, I'm not doing well mentally," because they were going to maybe cut my leg off. So the infection got so bad, they were like, "We may have to cut your leg off above the knee." And I'm going, dude, I can't sit here. I can't handle this by myself. So I picked up the phone, made a phone call, and my friend and his wife were there when I got out of surgery. And from that point on, the next 48 hours, I had 17 visitors in my room. And over the next week, I had 48 visitors come by, because I made one phone call that said, I can't do this on my own. I can't handle this.
Can I ask how hard that was? Like, how hard was it for you to pick up the phone and make that call? Because I think for some people it can be very, very hard. Was that hard at all?
It wasn't as hard for me now, because I've gone through so many. I'm in multiple support groups. I do 12-step work, and one of the greatest support groups I've been a part of is called Celebrate Recovery. It's similar to Alcoholics Anonymous in the same 12 steps as AA, but it's just a Christ-centered 12-step group. And so I have learned over the years through my rehab centers and whatnot that I have to reach out for support. I have to pick up the phone. And so a lot of people aren't in that habit. A lot of people are scared to do that, to go, everybody's busy, I don't want to bother them. But you know what? I found that I'm actually robbing a friend an opportunity to help me. I'm robbing a friend an opportunity to serve somebody else, to get out of their crazy life, to get out of their head if I don't reach out for help.
I love
Because whenever somebody reaches out for help for me, I'm like, yeah, dude, what do you need? Yeah, okay, you need help? All right, I'll be there. Can't do it today, but tomorrow I'll take care of that.
And people love
So
to feel wanted. People love that. It makes them feel good to be able to help others.
yes. And I always thought I was putting a burden on somebody by asking for help. And it's really like you're giving them a gift and they don't know it.
Well, you make them feel so special that they were the ones you reached out to as well, right? Like
Yes.
it's like, wow, that he obviously really, really needed me, because people don't, I mean, some people, I guess, reach out for anything and everything all the time, but for some of us, it's very hard to do that. But when we do, I think the people on the other end do recognize, like, wow, they must really need my help. And wow, I must really be very special to them that I'm the person they called.
Yeah. It makes them feel, seen and validated. And, yeah.
Mhm. So, okay. So I want to go back to what we were talking about, when does this end? And I feel like it ends when we decide that it's like, this is happening for me, not
Mhm.
to me. I'm going to go back to, when I was really sick, and it's like I get diagnosed with another illness, and oh, why does this keep happening? And I looked at it like, oh, it was a change in my life, right? Like, oh, my life is different now. But I didn't even have to look at it that way, like that my life was changing. It wasn't. There was just something else to adapt to. And there was just
Mhm.
new things that I needed to learn. Everything doesn't have to be seen as like this change and I'm a totally new person, or life is so different and in this very dramatic way. It can be just simply seen as adaptation.
Hey, I'm getting some new tools. Hey, this is awesome. So when I was on the operating table on Easter Sunday, 2 weeks before that, so last February 12th, February 3rd, so
Mhm.
February 12th, my mom passed away,
I'm sorry.
and she was my best friend. Thank you. She was my best friend, my biggest supporter my entire life. And I was back in Texas. I live in Nashville now, but was back in Texas 10 times in a 11-month period, to help my dad and my mom with my mom's declining health from liver cancer. And she passed away February 12th. We came in for the funeral toward the end of February there, and literally picked up my mom's urn. I was on crutches because I couldn't walk because the ingrown hair on my leg was hurting. So we have family coming in from all over the country. My kids are there. We're literally picking my mom's urn up and putting it in the ground with my dad on crutches. And I come home and I have this surgery on Easter Sunday, and nobody was there. And I was like, one, they may cut my leg off again, and we just buried my mom. Like, there's no way I can handle this. And there was a moment in, I just watched a video last night. I was going through, weeding out some old videos on my phone. And there's a video that I posted on my socials last year that was just like, I hate this process. Like, I had tubes coming out of me. I had a wound vacuum on my leg. I had to go in, and every day they would cut tissue off of my limb to get fresh tissue and burn it with silver nitrate. And it was, I hate it. And I was sitting there going, I hate this. I hate the process of growth. Like, this process of growth is painful, and I didn't want to go through it. But in that moment, I was in the rehab hospital at this point. I was like, you know what? I'm going to step up and I'm going to use this for my good. And
Mhm.
I just made it, and I said, I'm going to do it for my mom. I'm going to do it for me. And I made a different choice. And I said, so I got into rehab. I couldn't even walk on my leg, and I got into rehab and started doing the physical therapy stuff and get back. I was like, I'm going to stay in shape. I'm actually going to be in better shape when I get done with this than I was before I came into it. And I would crutch into boxing class. There'd be, a bunch of boxing bags of boxing class. I would pull up a chair, and I would do boxing class with all these other people sitting in a freaking chair. And then I would take my crutches in between rounds, and I would crutch over and do pull-ups in between rounds. And I was like, I'm doing more than anybody else without a leg on. And all this to say is, it was giving me tools, because when I've gone back to San Antonio the last few months for the holidays, I met a new amputee, 18-year-old boy, just lost his leg right at Thanksgiving, in a motorcycle accident. And I got a friend of a friend connected me with him. And I go into a hospital room right after a week after Thanksgiving. I'm sitting there with him, and he hadn't even gotten out of bed yet. 18-year-old buff dude hadn't gotten out of bed yet to sit in the chair. And his parents were like, we're a little concerned. He just hadn't even moved yet. And he's a personal trainer building an online personal training business.
Mhm.
I said, dude, this accident, I just went through this stuff and I wanted to give up, but it's actually pushed me to be better. I encourage you to start filming yourself, start filming your comeback, start
Mhm.
filming yourself getting back in the gym and doing it without a leg. I go, this is going to set you apart from other personal trainers, you know. And so I said, use this to your advantage. And the next day he got out of bed. His mom sent me a picture. He was crutching down the hallway, and he just got his leg last week, and he's posted videos of himself online back in the gym. And it's like God had to take me through my crap so that I could go give that to somebody else, you know. And so
Yeah.
instead of wanting to change what's actually happening, just accept where we're at. And I've learned that I'm just constantly gathering new tools,
Yeah.
if I choose to look at it that way.
Exactly. I mean, that's the key, like you're saying, choose to look at it that way, right? Like we have the choice of how we view everything. There's always a choice. And some people will try to fight you. And those are the people that need to do the deepest reflections. If they truly believe there is only one way to view anything, then they need to spend a lot of time really reflecting, because there is always, always, always another viewpoint that you can take.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the key when we're struggling mentally with anything, is to really look at how we're feeling and figure out how else can we feel, because we can make that a choice. And a lot of people will say, no, but I feel this way. I believe it so much. Well, of course you do. You've told yourself that, but
Mm-hmm.
you can tell yourself anything, because it's like how they say, you know, no two people will experience the same event the same way, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, two people could be in a car crash together and have a totally different outlook afterwards, right? Even if they had the same outcome, even if they both lost a leg or they both got a concussion or they whatever it be, right? Or whether they experienced a car crash or they watched a car crash, but everybody is going to take away something different, because it's your mind.
Mm-hmm.
It's your mind, and you can change your perspective. So I think that's always a really cool thing for people to sit back and reflect on.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a trauma therapist really help me, point me in the right direction after my car accident. And I was in multiple rehab centers. My marriage was, flailing, all these bad things that happened since my car wreck, and good as well. But I also found my brother dead from an overdose,
Oh,
in LA. Yeah, thank you. I was living out in LA doing the acting stunt work thing. Ended up finding my brother dead from an accidental overdose, and so there was that trauma. And when I talked to a trauma therapist here in Nashville years ago, it was a phone consultation. I hadn't even seen her in person yet, and I gave her my brief story, and she said, "Interesting. Okay, I don't really." And this, she didn't say it in these terms, but this is what I heard was, "I don't care about your car accident. I don't care that you had a friend die in your car wreck or that you had your leg amputated. I don't care about your brother's death." She goes, "What I care about is what happened to you as a kid." And I was like,
yeah.
What are you talking about? Been to these treatment centers and spent tens of thousands of dollars, and nobody's ever asked me about my childhood." And she was like, "Yeah, what happened?" And I was like, "Nothing. I had great. My parents are still married. Like, both sets of grandparents are married. Grandpa was a famous preacher. Like, everything was great." She was, "I'm sure it was great. What happened?" And I was like, "Man, the only thing I can think of is I had these ear surgeries as a kid, but that wasn't a big deal. It was a long time ago. I'm past that." She was like, "Okay, all right. When you come in, let's start with that, because I guarantee you that's where your problem started, and that's why you reacted to these other things later on." And
Mhm.
as you're talking about reflection, it was like I had to go back to my childhood. I had just ear infections as a kid. I had transplanted eardrum. I had to fly out of state. I have a transplanted eardrum in my left ear and prosthetic bones in my left ear. And so as a child, I felt defective. I internalized it as I'm broken. Something's wrong with me. I'm unfixable. I have to fly out of state and have these almost like aliens probing into my brain, is what it felt like as a child, to have all these doctors and their masks and their lights all over me all the time. And, going back and realizing that my insecurity started as a child. And that's why I became a class clown in high school. I was class clown, most outgoing, most school spirited, best personality. And the therapist was like, "Well, yeah, because you felt insecure and broken and defective."
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it really helped to go back and kind of, like you're saying, go back to deep reflection, to make a different choice.
Yeah, I talk about this a lot, but a lot of people don't realize that the first time we have experiences of trauma and joy and all the different emotions, we are wiring our brain to experience it the same way for the rest of our lives. And so that is why it is so important to go back to your childhood and really dive deep and figure it out. And a lot of people, you got to kind of like just meditate on it almost, because it's buried so deep that you aren't
Mhm.
even aware. Like that did not seem like anything to you, I'm sure, right? It
Yeah.
was my ears.
But I internalized it on a cellular level. Like my
Yes.
body stored it's like the book Body Stores the Trauma, or Body Keeps the Score. Body Keeps the
Mhm.
Score is, I felt like my body since childhood had just kind of suppressed this stuff on a cellular level and was just holding on these insecurities. And nobody told me that. I had all the support in the world, but I felt, um, man, something's weird. Something's off with me.
That is, yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like we're gonna have to dive into that on another day.
Yeah,
That is a huge thing for me is, I mean, people want to figure out how can I change my thought process and how can I rewire my brain? And part of it is, yes, changing your patterns and balancing things out for the present, but also going back to how you experience things. And we actually can experience them differently, especially as an adult, because you can look back now on your childhood and how you experienced it during that time. And you can see that the perspective you took in that moment was of a small little boy, right? But if you had the mind of an adult, you could have seen it very differently and been like, no, you're not defective. And
What
you
you're
would,
describing is exactly what my trauma therapist had me do. She called it a graphic narrative.
Mhm.
And so what I had to do is, here I am. I got like a master's degree in counseling, undergrad in communications. I've, been through schools and all this stuff. And she sits me down after telling me, like, I don't care about your past traumas. I don't care about what's happened to you recently. I care about your childhood. And so she gives me blank piece of paper and crayons. And we're in this like cold, like red brick office of hers. And she's like, all right, what do you remember of your childhood? What do you remember? And so over the course of multiple sessions, over multiple weeks, I drew out multiple pages of my childhood playing basketball, and I was getting it out of my head onto paper. And then I remember drawing like what those lights felt like as going through surgeries and these things. And so what she had me do is we would put up on the wall, and then she would have me tell her about it. And so maybe this is something somebody in your audience might be able to do. Is I'm not a big journaler, but even drawing and getting creative and putting it on paper and then putting it up. And this is free. I paid thousands of dollars for this therapy. But so she put up on the wall and had me tell her about it. So it's almost like a movie. It's almost like it's removed from me. That's not me anymore. That's what I remember, but that's not me anymore. And I was able to tell the story from far away and go, look, I'm safe right now. I'm safe now. I didn't feel safe then, and that's okay, but I can't. So yeah, it's kind of what you're talking about
Yeah.
is the process I went through called graphic narrative with this trauma therapist.
Yeah. That's, well, I don't do it that way with clients, but I do something very similar. And it's more of a meditative state almost with, their eyes are closed and they kind of relive it and re-experience it exactly how they thought they did. And
Mm-hmm.
then we try to experience it in a different way. And a lot of times people are like, wow, like I never saw it that way, but I get it. I didn't have to see it the way I did. So it's really
Mm-hmm.
interesting. But I do want you to dive into your whole story, how you lost your leg. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I was a senior at Baylor University. I'm born and raised in San Antonio, and I was a senior my first senior year at Baylor. And man, I had the perfect life set up. I was on a full ride scholarship that year. As a communications major, I was doing video work for the athletic staff, and so I would film football games and practices. And I got the same scholarship the football players had. And so I was on full ride scholarship. Social chairman of my fraternity, doing the frat thing. My grades were fine. My grades were manageable. Life was manageable. I was dating a cheerleader. And so life could not have been going any better. I set up this cruise for like 35 of us to go cruise out of New Orleans for spring break, March of 2000. So we all go on this cruise. We're driving back, and the unthinkable happens. There's 4 of us in a car. Tire blew out, and right rear tire on my side, and the car just started violently shaking. And I'm in the time slows down, and you're like, no, this is not about to happen. This is not about to happen.
Yeah.
And we veered toward the grass. As soon as we hit the grass, we did like a 180 and just started rolling across the other side of I-45. We were outside of Houston into a field. And so witness reports say we rolled anywhere between 6 and 12 times.
Wow.
It was pretty gnarly. Luckily, we missed oncoming traffic.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking the car's going to blow up. What happens in a movie when a car rolls 10
Yeah.
times, it blows up, So I was conscious the whole time. I saw my legs, somehow my legs got out the window getting crushed. And
Oh,
so I said, I got to get out. I undid my seatbelt. We're laying upside down. I undid my seatbelt. I tried to get out of the car, and I could see my foot was wrapped around. I could basically my ankle was split in half, and I could see the bottom of my foot. I was standing on my shin.
oh, wow.
Yeah. And so I just threw myself out of the car. I crawl out, and I look back, and all 3 of my friends are still in the car. And I said, you know what, if this thing blows up and I'm sitting here not helping, like I wouldn't be able to live with that. So I said, if it blows up, we're all going down together. Let's do this. So I crawl back in, get one person out, and one friend, Ashley, I always like saying her name, Ashley Furman. She had pinned in from the car. Her boyfriend was tending to her. The first responders got there, cut her out with the jaws of life. Here comes a helicopter, comes flying in on I-45. And I mean, it's like a scene in a war movie. I mean, it really was. It felt like I was in a battle. And they take Ashley out and put her in the helicopter, and she passed before they got her to a hospital.
Make me cry.
Yeah, Ashley was, and she had the crew set on 70 on a beautiful day out. Nobody was drinking or driving. It was just a freak accident. Nobody could have done anything differently. But I ended up having 14 procedures that year to try to piece my foot and ankle back together. It got to a point where after a year, I was on a cane. I had a brace up to my knee. I had to have a custom shoe built. I was losing height in my ankle because the ankle structure started to collapse. And so here I am, an active 22, 23-year-old kid trying to graduate college, going back and forth from surgeries in San Antonio to Waco to school. And my quality of life had just continued to go down. And so another infection came, and I finally decided to just amputate below the knee. And so I'm glad I did. But here's a lesson: is a lot of times just cutting the problem off doesn't solve your problems. And I thought cutting the pain off with just stopping it was going to solve my problems. But really, it was those feelings, is internal, that trauma of the car wreck I didn't deal with for years and years and years. Physically, I was able to get back going. And I think a lot of people in today's society, we do that. We want to put our ideal life on social media, and people see that we're moving and that we're shaking and that things are good. But behind the scenes, I was traumatized. I was scared. I was fearful. I was angry. I was miserable inside. And but I hit the ground running. I got walked the stage 6 weeks later to get my diploma on a temporary prosthetic, and moved out to San Diego to work on my master's in counseling. I was like, I'm gonna go take this situation and hopefully be able to help others. When I went to San Diego working on master's, what I ended up doing was got addicted to a bunch of various pain medication, the pain pills and Adderall, alcohol and marijuana. Those are the 4 substances I would rotate between just to calm my central nervous system down, to calm all those nerves down. But I didn't talk to anybody about it. I was lying to therapists, lying to friends, and things continued to progress. But I got done in my master's program. What I realized is I was not dealing with my own trauma, but I was helping people with their trauma. Let me go help. Let's talk about your problems. You got some problems. Let's talk about that. And that way I didn't have to talk about mine. It was just another diversion. Let me just kick the can further down the street. And then I ended up stumbling. I graduated, I guess, 2005. Date myself now. 2005 from San Diego State. And right around that time, I got signed to as a body double for a TV show for the lead actor, and who was my cousin, actually. And so we were on the first show to come out about the war in Iraq. It's called Over There. It just lasted one season. It was on FX, but it was the first show to come out about the war. So it was kind of controversial. And 2 cousins working together on the show. We made People Magazine and Access Hollywood, and all these national press people came out. And I was like, man, there's a nice niche in the industry for one-legged guys.
Yeah.
So I worked on the 13 episodes. We would do camera tricks and we would slide my prosthetic into a camera shot and make it look like it was my cousin's. And so had some fun doing that, and got into the partying lifestyle, of course. Ended up making it onto, like I said earlier, Superbad. I got seen in Superbad where I jogged past Jonah Hill on my prosthetic and cursed at him, and worked on NCIS and ER and a number of other projects, and just got deeper into my addictions out in LA. And then in December 2008, we were already planning on moving out of LA. We had our firstborn out there. We said, we got to get out of LA, and we were going to move to Nashville. And that's when I found my brother had passed away from his drug overdose. And that didn't help. And so we moved to Nashville, and I got in with Dave Ramsey. Do you know who Dave Ramsey is? Yeah. So if you don't know, he's a Christian guy, heavy believer, and he gets people out of debt. His whole thing's a total money makeover thing. And so I thought working for a great Christian organization with a guy like that would be a good environment for me. What I did is I brought me with me, and it didn't matter where I was bringing me with me everywhere. and my addictions were getting so bad. I was literally calling churches on behalf of Dave Ramsey to sell event tickets while drinking vodka at my desk and popping pain pills. And, it was just, and then when you get fired, when you get called into Dave Ramsey's office by HR and him, and you sit across the table from him, and he says, look, you obviously have some problems, and I can't help you, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you go. I'm going to give you that opportunity to go get the help that you need. And it was like, wow, man. People have been telling me for years, like, you might have a problem with drinking. Yeah. I was, no. But when somebody like Dave Ramsey holds a mirror up to you, you're like, okay, I got a problem. So ended up in 5 rehab centers in 7 years, and ended up living in a mold infested trailer on the banks of the Cumberland outside of downtown Nashville. Got kicked out of my house, and the wife said, "You're out, get out of here," and not dealing with you anymore. And I would have times of sobriety and times where I would just continue to relapse, and end up working for a group of addiction treatment centers for several years and sharing my story around the country, talking to colleges, universities, speaking on addiction panels, and all this great stuff, hosting a podcast on addiction. I had 3 of the members of the band Korn on the show, and had some high profile people.
I mean, I remember Korn, but other people are probably like, who?
Oh, yeah. So Ray, the drummer, lives right by me. He's known him for a number of years. Super, super nice guy. So anyway, doing all this great work in the field of addiction recovery and using my brother's story. We didn't get my brother help, but I was able to get help. So I'm able to have a different choice. I wasn't working a recovery program, but I was using my work as my recovery. And so I was using my accomplishments to fill the void inside, to fill that hole, like we started off with, that hole in my soul. I'd wake up in the morning, I'd go, oh, I got to go to work, and I got to go help people's lives. And that's going to, but it's really like, I got to wake up every day and make that conscious connection with my higher power. And so the job ended up going away. They sold the company, and a bunch of us got laid off. And so my job went away. I started drinking again, and I lost my house, my wife, my kids, my job, and COVID hit. And that was not a very good time. As you can imagine, being isolated, living alone for the first time in my life. And I put on 55 pounds. I hadn't been so depressed in my entire life. And I made a phone call. Going back to our first of our conversation, I made a phone call. Hey, if there's somebody out there, I don't know, God's just putting this on my heart to share this with your audience. If you're going through something today and you need help, pick up the phone and call somebody and let them know what's going on. Because it just starts with one phone call. I made a phone call, and I had a buddy come over. He's a member of SEAL Team 6. He lives here near me. And so he was there when they took down bin Laden, and Navy SEAL for 20 years. And I called him over to my house, and I said, man, I'm not doing well. And he said, yeah. He said, how about you get a piece of paper and just write down 2 things you can do today? He goes, do you think you can take a shower today? I was like, I don't know, man. I was like, I don't know. And so I went from like speaking on addiction panels, hosting a podcast, to can I take a shower?
Yeah.
And having to start all over again. And that's okay. Sometimes we got to start all over again. And it started again with just a simple phone call to a buddy and get some support and get me back in my 12-step groups. And now I lead a 12-step group, and I'm in a men's Bible study on Monday nights. And I mentor kids at my church's school, and God's done some great things in my life. And I'm just very blessed to have had the resources that I've had and the experience that I've had and the tools that hopefully help somebody else out get through their day.
Do you ever ask yourself, like, what is the blessing here? I feel like that's something I like to ask myself when something is feeling like, why is this happening right now? Like, oh my gosh, this is a mess. It's like, no, take a step back. Like, what is the blessing here?
I don't do that enough. No, that's a great tool in the toolbox. Yeah.
I would love that.
I don't do that enough, so thank you.
Yeah, I know. I felt called to say that, and I'm like, I don't know if he does this, but I would love that for you. I want to ask. I feel like I shouldn't say it necessarily, but I do want to ask because, and maybe this completely was not your situation. I just know that when people are in difficult places, and it goes back to certain things, they often feel guilt for not feeling the same way someone else would have felt. And so I just wonder, this is kind of a hard question for me to ask you, but I wonder if I'd like to know how you felt about your addiction and all the things that you were doing to your body that you now know are not good for you, right? And were not good choices. Did you ever feel like, because I feel like I took on these feelings of my own too when I was battling my depression, but did you ever feel like Ashley would look down on you and be like, do you have any idea what I would give to live again, sort of thing? Like, did you ever feel like, here I am, just like, I feel like almost sick to my stomach to even like say this. It's a terrible thought, right? It's horrible. And I'm not projecting that on you by any means and saying like you should have felt that. I don't think you should have by any means, but I think that's a thought that people will often feel with things, is the other person that's actually technically a little worse off, right? Like she's dead and gone. And it's like, and then here you are still getting to live. And then the choices you're making are barely living, right? Like you're not.
Yeah. So I didn't feel that with Ashley. I did it with my brother, absolutely with my brother, and then most recently with my mom. I'm kind of like, if I take a step back and I say, what if they're looking down on me? Or I know
Yeah.
they are. If
Yeah.
they're looking down, are they disappointed in me? Because my brother was so proud of me. I was the only sibling, and we were best friends. So we were living in LA there together toward the end, and we weren't close growing up, or high school, college years. He was off doing his thing, but after my car wreck, we became really close. And so, yes, there's times where I felt a lot of shame, a lot of guilt and a lot of shame that like I'm letting my brother down, like uh, by him, by making the choices I was making with my addiction, knowing he had addiction issues. You think that would steer me the other way, like, oh, dude, it took my brother down. But, I've been on the edge of overdose in years past, and almost, drinking myself to death in years past, or drinking and driving and, doing the stupid stuff. But I did feel that with my brother. And then more recently with my mom, of like, what can I do to make them proud? What can I do to,
Yeah, I'm sorry. That was like such a tough thing to say, but I think that's the thought a lot of people have. Like when I was going through really severe depression, it would be like, why do I feel so depressed? I have this and I have that, and I am this and I am that. And like, I knew it and I recognized it, but not enough to get myself out of the hole. Right. And now what I see and understand and know is that when our brain is imbalanced and like it strongly believes something to be a certain way, we can't really get out of it. Right. So we have to rebalance ourselves and not have that one belief be imbalanced. It has to be balanced. And so it's like, if we overly believe that we are this, we are that, we got to change it and start believing the opposite. So whatever those beliefs are that you're taking on, you have to balance it out, because you can still have those beliefs to a degree, but you're feeling so, I don't want to say any bad words because YouTube does not like that. The algorithm does not like bad words. I've done my research, but anyway, so when the brain strongly believes one way versus the other, like that is the key, is to start believing the other side of it, which can be really hard. And that's because that's why you're stuck. And that's why you are where you are. You believe that you are worthless, or you believe that you are not as good as somebody and all these things. And you have to start like convincing yourself of the opposite so that the brain isn't so imbalanced. And I mean, for me, and what I've realized is that is the key for all situations and traumas and tragedies and all the things that we're struggling with in our brain. It's our brain so strongly believes it on one side.
Mm-hmm.
You got to bring the other side up so that it's balanced.
What's coming up as you describe that? What's coming up for me is a lot of times I can't just change my thinking, or I can't rebalance the brain without action. And so by taking action, that helps me. Shouting affirmations into a mirror doesn't change me. Having a stack of undeniable proof that I am who I say I am. Mm-hmm. And so if I have a belief of I'm not worthy, I suck, I'm life in where I want it to be. Well, if I just take one small action, that helps me kind of start to climb out of that dark, depression, is by taking small little actions physically. Mm-hmm. And then my mind starts to change as a part of taking new actions. So that's kind of what came up for me.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, I often talk people through it in whether it's journaling or just talking out loud, but really like balancing those thoughts out. But then, yes, act it out, like you're saying, live it out, be it as well.
Be it, yes, exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. And there's more. I know there's more coming. I think we have to do a second episode. There was too much there to even unpack it all. I feel like I need to do a whole second episode, because I know there's a lot more that you could share perspective wise on. Just sounds like a lot of different things, right? Addiction, or losing a limb, or losing a loved one, or even, losing care for your own body, because it sounds like you some weight and different things like that. So I know there's a
Yeah.
lot you could share. Where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
Yeah. So my platform is Connection. Have you ever heard of the rat park experiment?
No, I haven't.
So real quickly, they put a rat inside of a cage and they gave it water or water laced with heroin or cocaine. Every single time a rat's by itself, it goes for the cocaine laced water compulsively until it dies.
Oh, wow.
So they thought since the 70s that the rat was just there's a chemical hook in the drug, and so you can't stop it. Well, they did the experiment decades later, and they built Rat Park, and it was this huge park with all these rats could run around, and balls to play with, and loads of sex, and everything rat about town would want. Same water options, only not one of them ever got addicted to the water, not one of them ever overdosed, and it
Interesting.
led them to believe that it was Connection. And so John Mabry Connects is the answer. People can find johnmabryconnects.com, and on my social media is typically are all John Mabry Connects, and I do one-on-one coaching with people to help them get reconnected with themselves, and
Yeah.
I do looking for more speaking opportunities. I kind of got out of the routine with my mom's health this last year and a half, but always looking for speaking opportunities at churches, schools, colleges, universities, fraternities, sororities, things like that. So.
Mhm. All right. Well, I'm so glad to have you here today with us, but let's definitely do another episode. Thank you so much for sharing today.
Well, thanks for doing the great work that you do. You're shining light and connecting people in your special way, and it's amazing. So thank you for having me.
Of course, absolutely.